Hi everyone, welcome to Blockcast with Will and Simon. My co-host Will, what are we talking about today, mate?
Hey Simon, today we're talking about a project that I am personally really excited about. It's called Eigen Layer, and really new, really different. Haven't seen anything like it before.
Really new, really different. That's exciting for blockchain space, really, isn't it? So tell us,
Yeah.
what is it? What is it doing? What makes it so exciting?
Well, the technical term for it is restaking primitive, but really, in layman terms, what it does is it lets you take the ETH that you're staking on Ethereum and restake it anywhere else you want, while also leaving it in Ethereum.
So basically, you can double, triple, or increase your yield by staking it in another service.
Exactly. And the cool thing about this is that one, it creates an opportunity for stakers on Ethereum to increase the amount they earn from providing security on the Ethereum layer. But then the other cool thing is that if I'm a new project and I've started a new protocol or something like that as a layer 2 on Ethereum, one of the key challenges I have, one of the biggest challenges I have is making my new service secure. Because in order to do that, I need to convince you, Simon, as an Ethereum staker, to maybe sell your Ethereum, acquire these new tokens, and then come onto my service and stake them. Now, what EigenLayer does is it lets me just say, hey, I've got a new service here. These are the fees I'm offering. These are the benefits I'm offering. And all I need for you to do is just essentially restake it on my service. And instantly, I get the extra security that I need without needing to create a new token, without needing to go out there campaign, without making you sell the tokens that you have. It's really easy, really seamless to essentially borrow all the security that is on Ethereum and also include it into my app as well.
That's really interesting. But let's backtrack there a little bit and just talk about securing. We're saying using ETH to secure the network, or ETH to secure different networks as well. So let's tell the audience exactly what it means to how staking secures the ETH network.
The thing about any network that you create, you need to make sure that everybody who is providing these services is a good actor. Let's say we create an oracle, something like Chainlink, and I provide one of the computers that sends data to Ethereum from the outside world. That's essentially what Chainlink does. Now, to make sure that I'm sending the correct data, I need to stake my link tokens into the service, and then I need to provide data to Ethereum. Now, what happens if my node misbehaves, if my node sends data that is different from everybody else? That implies that I'm trying to cheat the system or something like that. And what happens is that the tokens that I have staked to guarantee my honesty are slashed. That is actually what is called Ethereum slashing. So if I've staked maybe 1,000 link tokens and my node is caught misbehaving, maybe 10 of them are slashed and they're given to everybody else who is acting honestly. And so staking is what makes sure that pretty much any service, any protocol on Ethereum is running securely. And the challenge that most protocols have is bringing in enough tokens onto their network to guarantee that security. To be a little bit more precise, if I to create a new service, and let's say I've only got $1,000 worth of Ethereum in my service guaranteeing the security, the problem is that somebody with $50,000 worth of Ethereum can come there, they can create a whole bunch of nodes, and then they can send false data to Ethereum and really penalize the honest guys who only have $1,000. But then if you can have a lot of tokens staked on my service, then it makes it really hard for a bad actor to come and sort of muscle us out with their stake.
So basically what we're talking about here is that the economic value of Ethereum can be utilized to protect these smaller protocols or other networks. And what we want to see is that rather than protocols having to bootstrap their own economic value or their own backing, they can use the EigenLayer to leverage off Ethereum's economic value already.
Exactly. It's such a big problem that has really gone unsolved. Let's say I were to create a new oracle separate from Chainlink. Chainlink is already out there. It's super established. It's got a big amount of stake there. Let's say my protocol is just a little bit better than Chainlink. Maybe it's just a little bit easier to code, or maybe it's just a little bit faster. it is an improvement on the service, but then trying to convince a developer who's already staking on Chainlink to come and move to my service is going to be hard, because the developer is going to go, well, it's a new service, yeah, it looks great, but nobody's using it. And I'm going to face that chicken and egg problem. So in order to create anything that's even that's going to attract enough staking, I need to really super innovate and make it super different and super exciting. Now, what EigenLayer does is it makes it it removes the cost of moving tokens. EigenLayer says, well, you've got a great service, just go tell the developers what your fees are and convince them to restake on your service. And really what they're doing is they're getting extra tokens. They don't have to do any extra work on their side.
Okay, so you've mentioned there oracles. What other examples is EigenLayer going to be suitable for? What other kind of projects and protocols would people want to use?
To be honest, really, it's anything that you want to build on top of Ethereum. Bridges, rollups, any sort of services, really any protocol that you want. Protocols that prevent front-running attacks on exchanges. Something really cool that EigenLayer have actually built on top of that already is called EigenDA, and it's a data availability layer. Essentially something that blockchains can plug into to help their consensus mechanism work faster. To make it simple is, let's say you were to send me a token, Simon. Well, that's fine. We're both in Australia, and so the nodes in Australia are going to know that. But then in order for Ethereum to reach consensus, this information is to spread everywhere, South America, Africa, America, and in order for the whole blockchain to agree. And now for that to happen, what you need is something called data availability. On Ethereum, it's fairly slow. The bandwidth is something like 80 kilobytes per second. Now, EigenLayer have built EigenDA, which is sort of a plug-and-play module that you can use for your layer 2. And the data availability is insanely fast. It goes from 80 kilobytes per second to 15 megabytes per second. That means you can get to consensus super fast on your layer 2. And the cool thing is that they've also made it really easy to build a layer 2. So if I'm building a layer 2, I have to build a consensus mechanism, the data availability mechanism, and all of these kinds of things. Now, they've already given me the data availability module that I can just plug into my blockchain and use it pretty easily. And I'm also guaranteed the security thanks to the restaking, because it's got Ethereum's security guarantees based on the stake size.
Yeah, and so the concept of data availability, in my mind, I always put it back to, I guess, the internet and bandwidth, basically, because the internet, when it was dial-up, could only push so much information and data down the phone lines, and then we got cables, and now we've got fiber. So the same thing is data availability will allow more data to go through, and the explosion of what could be done on blockchains with that faster tunnel of data could really change what we do with blockchain technology.
Oh yeah, heaps. And the cool thing is that usually to get speed, you can do some extra innovations, but a lot of the times what you also do is you just make your requirements for nodes more strict. So part of the reason that Ethereum is a little bit slow is, let's say almost anyone can join, in that you can have a slower machine, you can have slower bandwidth, less RAM. But now with EigenLayer, you can say, well, this is my DA layer, and these are my requirements. If you want to be a node, you need at least these requirements, at least this much bandwidth, and then you can join. And the thing is, you can also create another data availability layer that's maybe a little bit more decentralized, if that's what people need, a little bit more slower, and still allow enough security for both different data availability layers without needing to compete. They're just there for developers to pick and choose, and they're all, again, getting the security from the F that is on Ethereum that has been also restaked into those modules. Kind of cool.
If I could try and gauge, I guess, from my just investor mind of what we would do at data availability, would this then mean that I've heard EigenLayer can scale they're talking about scaling from 15 megabytes per second up to gigabytes per second in a couple of years' time. That's insane amounts. And so my kind of thought process is that now mean like NFTs will be on chain, but I can have a 4K video NFT that I own, which is all on chain. Is that the kind of concept of what might be occurring with this extra data availability?
Data availability is more about coming to consensus. So it's really getting the bandwidth to spread across. But then, and I mean, it might be able to transfer the, let's say, the 4K a little bit faster. But then now we're also talking about something a little bit different, which is storage. Now, if you want a 4K video, you'll want it stored somewhere. But again, it still brings us back to that whole security guarantee thing, is that if I want to start my own storage network, boom, I'll do it on EigenLayer, and I won't have a problem again in terms of getting the security. So it's all about borrowing Ethereum security, putting it on layer 2, building whatever you want. And there's the cool thing about it is that everyone believes that it's going to increase the rate of innovation, in that there's no longer a bottleneck of how do I convince everybody to stake on my network. And the other cool thing is that, well, a developer might go, well, okay, fine, I can build my own protocol, and then I can use Ethereum to guaranteed security. But what if I want to create my own token? What if I have like really cool use cases for my own token besides security? So EigenLayer says, well, it's up to you. You can definitely have Ethereum restaked. They also have it so that you can get already, let's say, Ethereum staking derivatives from Rocket Pool, for example. They've also got it so that you can have LP restaked from Ethereum into your app. So you can have all of that in your app, but then on top of that, you can also say, hey, and I'm also going to use my token on top of all of that, on top of all that other security to stake on my network, maybe with extra incentives. So you can kind of bootstrap your token in that you'll have the initial security of Ethereum, and then if more people start to adopt your token, you can just make it the main token for your app.
So let's talk about the risks that are involved in this then. So obviously, if you are staking ETH, it's kind of the best risk-free yield that we kind of have in the crypto space now. Then I'm going to take that staked ETH and potentially go and stake it in another protocol to guarantee their security. So what happens if that protocol, let's use the EigenLayer data availability as an example, what happens if that protocol fails? What happens to my staked ETH?
That's a good point. There's definitely smart contract risk. I think the biggest one is probably centralized, and that's the one that EigenLayer has, essentially the restaking primitive, as they call it. So it hasn't been launched on mainnet yet. It's on testnet, and ideally we would hope that everything goes fine. But if that ever breaks in some way, if that's ever hacked, then I guess it puts all the ETH that has been restaked through it at risk. But then assuming that's secure, then you still have potential issues with the places that you're restaking in. Now, the thing is with restaking is that what you're doing is you are downloading a client and you're saying, I've restaked my ETH here, and I promise you that my computer is going to behave properly. Well, what if you're attacked by a virus? What if the place that you've restaked has some sort of a smart contract risk as well? What if that one is hacked and it looks like your computer is misbehaving or something like that? Then that means that the tokens that you are staking on that new service are going to get slashed. And so that is definitely a risk. And that means that developers will need to be very careful in terms of where they choose to restake. So it's not just kind of willy-nilly where you can go and stake it anywhere. It's really up to the developer, up to the person who owns the node, the staker, to kind of pick and choose which service that they think is secure. So there's definitely some responsibility on the developer side as well.
So just to dive into that a little bit more, I understand the risk of smart contracts. I understand slashing. I understand that, you know, if my node is not doing what it's supposed to, I understand those risks. Do we actually have project risk? If I stake my ETH into a service and a protocol because I think it's meeting all the right criteria, but crypto, lots and lots of projects fail. They don't get off the ground. If that project fails, is my ETH at risk? Am I being a venture capitalist in a way by staking and trying to become the economic security of that protocol? Is my ETH at risk at project failure?
The ETH should be safe if the project fails, if it shuts down or anything like that. Because EigenLayer make sure that the only time that your ETH would be in trouble would be if something if your node looks like it's misbehaving. Something needs to make it look like your node is misbehaving, and in that way your ETH would be slashed. Not all of it, but part of it. And sometimes that can be the problem of the project that you've invested in that their algorithms don't work properly, or some malicious hacker has gone and they've caused chaos. They won't get your ETH, but they'll make it look like everybody's misbehaving. In that case, what would happen is everybody's ETH would definitely be slashed. And then at some point, either the developer would pull their ETH out immediately, or what else will happen is that the project would detect bad behavior and shut that down, because it's obviously in the project's best interest to behave and keep everybody staking on their side. But that risk is definitely there.
So if the project's just not, like if it's an oracle and the oracle is just not being used by anyone, it becomes a dead project. My ETH is still there and I can pull it out regardless.
Yeah, your ETH is still there, and you don't even need to pull it out from the project. You just need to tell EigenLayer that you're no longer providing restaking to that service, and your ETH is always sitting on Ethereum, actually.
Yeah, so that's good. So you're not venturing, you're not becoming like a venture capitalist per se by doing this staking, but there is obviously a significant amount of risk that people need to understand when they're getting into something like this. Cool. And also, mate, so EigenLayer token is their token. How do we invest in this?
Well, that's the thing. They haven't announced a token that I could find, but I do believe that there should be a token out based on, I suppose, the chatter online. It's likely that it'll probably be used for governance, maybe out of security. And I mean, in terms of governance, there's some pretty interesting things you can vote on. For example, what kind of tokens are allowed to be restaked? Right now, what's allowed is Ethereum, Rocket Pool, restaked ETH, I believe some LP tokens. So there'll be some, I think it would be really interesting for other projects to acquire the EigenLayer token if it does come out, and sort of vote for the tokens to be used as restaking primitives. And the testnet is out, so it's definitely worth going out there. There'll probably be an airdrop, I assume. Help them test everything, and maybe get an airdrop in the future. Yeah,
I think like most projects these days, they have something like $50 million in capital from venture capitalists. So projects these days get this funding, and they don't have to bootstrap a token onto it straight away. But there is definitely talk of tokenizing this later. And I saw in some of the discords, not by anyone official per se, but people talking about, definitely DAO style token that will go towards this. There's also talk about airdrops, as there normally always is, to incentivize people to use the protocol from the start. It's only on Goerli testnet for anyone who's actually tried it. So I went and tried it the other day, and I did stake some Goerli ETH on their data availability, and it's just fairly simple, fairly straightforward, like most people who are used to, I guess, using DeFi and things like that. So fairly simple at stage. And I think when it becomes on mainnet, it's definitely something you could play around with to get potential airdrops in the future. And, it's good to see new projects that are coming out as well, I think. So it's kind of like in many ways, its own little alpha project going along here, because anybody who wants to try and get economic security through Ethereum is possibly going to put their hand up through EigenLayer. So you might get some insight into some new projects that are coming out as well.
Oh yeah, I'm really looking forward to see how the TVL will grow. I wonder what the trajectory will be. I think the only thing that people might be concerned in this is it's a new service and they're not sure about the smart contract risk. But it's really tempting. It's very tempting. If I'm getting 2% or 3% or whatever when I'm staking on Ethereum, it's extremely tempting to stake it on something else and I guess boost my earnings.
And I think that's the thing there, is that people will have to make their own risk to reward of, you're already earning 4.5%, 5% when you staked ETH. Do you want to try and, go down the degen path and squeeze a little bit more out of it? So everyone's got to kind of make that decision. Maybe the answer is you do it with a little part of your Ethereum, not all of your Ethereum, but everyone can make that decision for themselves, I guess.
Indeed.
All right, I think that closes us for today. Will, thanks very much for your time.
Amazing, Simon. Thanks. Until next time.